So I was asked by a commenter if I ever really truly had deep pain and suffering in my life. I told him that we have all experienced these things to one degree or another in our lifetimes. Then I told him what my friend Cash Snowden recently told me about suffering that I thought he might appreciate, which was, quote, "Suffering requires a narrative. Pain can be embraced, enjoyed. Suffering and pain are not the same thing. Suffering requires a story in the mind told and believed. Without that story being told and believed, there is just phenomena. The presence of phenomena doesn't have the power to make us suffer. Only our reaction to objects and circumstances can make us suffer." Unquote. And to this the commenter replied, "Metasage, I fully understand that, but it doesn't negate it all. We simply cannot suppress the mind day to day. It's just more insensitive Stoicism rhetoric." You told the commenter that he doesn't have empirical experience in your rock video, right? Okay, fair enough. So how can you understand someone else's experience with pain and suffering? It's not all the same visages that dance along. Consciousness is the same, but points of perception have no right to point to Stoicism on a soapbox as a remedy. Your perspective seems to blame everything on points of perception, forgetting that we are part of the whole. There's no way of wading through this contextualization's temporary aspects of functionality and still remain in it. Unquote. So what exactly is up for this proposed negation that cannot be negated? Does it have anything to do with the actual pain and suffering? Or is this just referring to a victimology? If we can fully understand that suffering is caused by a reaction to circumstances and a narrative told to oneself, then the remedy is clear, isn't it? How isn't it not the same visages that dance along? Because the specifics of my melodrama are different than the specifics of his melodrama? I mean, isn't it all melodrama? How is it not all the same? To think that one's own suffering is somehow more valuable, more important than someone else's is a little opinionated and biased. And no one is saying to repress the mind. It wouldn't really be accurate to say that anyway. The mind cannot be repressed. Only emotions, feelings, impulses, and reactions can be either expressed or repressed. And that isn't what's being advocated around here. I say don't express or repress. Let it flow through you. Witness it. Be present. Be fully aware of it. But don't feel the need to interfere with attempts at trying to block it or boost it. Our assistance isn't required, really. Much of life is about pain and pleasure management. These stimuli will occur again and again, but it need not cause us to suffer or have an orgasm. Or, to be put another way, to indulge in attachments. That is, seeking to sustain certain circumstances or seeking to avoid certain circumstances. Depression or euphoria are the psychological result of the indulgence into the narratives associated with the stimuli. It's not a state of being victimizing us. It's a self-imposed state, so to speak. To say that these things are insensitive Stoicism really makes me wonder about the motive of those who like to wear their suffering like some kind of red badge of courage. Like assuming a victim status affords one some special standing. It's a little bit annoying. I find it very unbecoming for people to revel in victimhood. They think no wisdom or activism should apply to them, feel as if they are above any effort to overcome obstacles, and feel they have some sort of higher ground from which they can wag their fingers at everyone from. This alone being the extent of their efforts, and of which they think is dutifully theirs by right, and of which is an exercise of ample action. And if you happen to disagree with them, then all you need is a hammer to the eye, or a family member to be racked by disease, in order for you to understand their perspective, and hence agree with their narrative. Nah, that's all wrong. And it's none of that which is imagined. That is playing the victim, plain and simple. It doesn't give one any special understanding, nor does it elect one to some automatic podium of spirituality. And besides, isn't that forgetting the relativity of our pain and our suffering? Just as we try and minimize others because we feel we have endured so much more suffering than them, realize that there have been, and still are, many others who have experienced pain and suffering, the likes of which makes our own pain and suffering seem like tea time at the cat pajama show. So maybe our ideas of loftiness from suffering really isn't warranted, when there have been many others who have really had it so much more worse than us. Is that fair? Does it make sense? Or isn't it more realistic to understand that we all know what suffering is, but some experience it more often and to a higher degree than others? But does that fact discount anyone's suffering, or anyone's right to speak on suffering, or their suggestions as to the remedies of suffering? Granted, we don't know the exact configurations of each other's experiences with suffering. But that isn't saying very much. Understand. No one is trying to dismiss your suffering as invalid. No one is trying to take a shit on your suffering. No one is saying you don't have a right to feel the way you do about it. In fact, I'm very compassionate and empathetic towards your suffering. I wish I could take it all away and send soothing relief over you to wash away all your pain. But just because our experiences with suffering are not identical doesn't mean we can't speak on the issue together and explore remedies. It's not really the same as what I told that commenter in the rock video. When referring to the illusion and nature of reality, we can't just say, I understand, because we have gathered some intellectual information on the subject. When it comes to understanding the nature of reality, study, research, gathering knowledge, and building an intellect of details emphasizes the wrong approach. It's not a matter of learning. It's not a matter of adding. Empirical understanding is what is required. And this entails a slow, gradual deconstruction process of emptying, uncovering, and the removal of mental blockades. You unlearn it and realize it. like clear seeing. If someone doesn't realize it, it's quite clear because despite saying they understand it with words spoken, it's apparent to anyone who has already realized it if they really do or not. Someone who understands and realizes the nature of reality doesn't point to perceivables as having responsibility for their inner condition. Someone who is constantly externalizing and referencing the outside world as the source of their problems clearly hasn't made the hurdle yet. There's no faking it, or any way to grasp it through knowledge. So this is why this example is not on par with the experience of suffering. We all understand pain and suffering to different degrees. So this unites us, and we can all identify with and share different methods of managing it. Physical pain comes and goes. If it remains constant, well, soon tolerance is developed. But generally, pain is not something that sustains as such. But even if such a situation cropped up, where non-stop constant pain continued and no tolerance was acquired, there are still different ways to quell it, even if it means taking morphine for relief. But any pain can be healed. It's just a matter of finding the right method. It's certainly not a search that you can do on the outside. As for suffering, this is within our ability to control. And I'm not sure why anyone who is suffering would resent possible ways offered to overcome it. People that enable your suffering are not really your friends. Is that what we want? Do we want to be babied? Will it make us feel better if someone diapers and burps our suffering? Okay, maybe a moment of that is nice. But after that, it's time to lift up our head and take a walk in the sun. Because if not, then why are you here? If you say you have chronic pain and that there's no way to reduce it, I could either just dismiss you and say, yeah, you're right. Nothing I'm trying to show you can help you, so just ignore my videos. Or I'm going to keep on encouraging you with my methods. So then, who says I have no right to point to Stoicism as a remedy? It's a good remedy. It's a solid remedy. I want to offer positivity and strength to people who suffer. And it's not always insensitive to slap someone out of a torpor stupor. It's actually a disservice and injurious to enable someone to maintain victim mentality. I would argue that any true Stoic is only a Stoic because they have had to grapple with extraordinary suffering and have been able to transact the maneuver I'm referring to. Yeah, Stoics can laugh, joke, and smile as they're being bullwhipped. You know, the ones that don't bat an eye and even wink at you as they're being crucified. If I were someone who experienced a lot of pain and suffering, I would seek to learn from the Stoic, not dismiss them out of hand as insensitive. And I'm not sure what you mean when you say that I seem to want to blame everything on individuals, forgetting that they are a part of the whole and that there's no way of wading through this context as temporary aspects of functionality and still remaining in it. So I'll just say that nobody is a part of any whole. There's only whole. Parts are a part of the delusion. You are the clear seeing and not the seen. And what is the seen? Anything beyond the seeing, which includes your physical body, your psychology, your ego, your environment, other people, the world, the universe, and the context of all these things. So you see, even by me pointing that out just now is insensitive to the standard worldview of what a self is. But that's one thing you should understand about the meta-sage. I'm a nihilist. I commit menticide on a regular basis. I am here to undermine your values, reasons, purposes, and narratives. But if you watch my videos with any regularity, you should know that already. I go after everything, not just religion and dogma. I am a reality deconstructionist, and everything is on the table, even suffering. Yeah, maybe I'm a little insensitive, but it comes with the territory. Spirituality is not really about happy songs and gay dances. Spirituality is about going to war. It's about destroying untruths and tearing down false foundations. So if that's the charge, then I guess I'm insensitive. But remember, I don't twist anyone's arm and force them to my channel. If you want to be jerked around, there's plenty of fluff to be found out there. Self-help, self-improvement, motivation. There's plenty of fare that appeals to the lowest common denominator. But if you know who I am and keep returning here, don't bring along any sacred cows.